down. This is the time of transfer portal and NFL draft declarations. Let's start with Texas. Byron Murphy is going pro. He announced that today, stud defensive tackle that they have, and not surprising, he is on his way to the NFL, as is running back Jonathon Brooks, Craig, who suffered a torn ACL about, halfway through the season so far, so he's a couple months into his rehab, and there was some thought that he would come back, but as a running back, I don't know if you can really take that risk anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's good to see everybody, and what's up to the chat, and there's a lot of different things going on. I saw a little bit more activity when it came to, I guess, Florida politicians are still barking about demanding an ACC exit. I'm already kind of getting tired of that. I got to be honest with you guys. I know realignment never stops and everything, and not to say I'm tired of realignment and all that, but the Florida State stories already started kind of getting on my nerves, honestly. So there's that. There's declarations, as you said. There's the big national championship game on Monday night, and just a lot to unpack. So good to be here. But, yeah, when it comes to Texas, you knew that they were going to have some big decisions to be made here over the next few days coming out of the end of their season with a plethora of really talented NFL prospects on that roster. And didn't get around to even talking about it yesterday, but Xavier Worthy has declared, and we didn't mention that. But obviously that's a huge decision being made and not one that's all that surprising. And heard a really interesting conversation. I think it was Rod Babers, perhaps. Yeah, I think it was Rod Babers talking about, where Xavier Worthy falls all time in Texas wide receivers. And I hadn't really thought about that all that much, but he had him at like 5-ish, I think, all time. And to me, immediately that sounded kind of crazy. But then you run down where he is statistically, and it all kinds adds up. He's like top 5 all time in this, and he's like top 2, 3 in touchdowns in a single season, and he's like top 5 in career touchdowns, and he's top 5 in all these different things. And Rod Babers saying that he would have him number 3 Texas wide receiver all time behind Roy Williams, and Roy Williams just a freak show of a talent and a specimen, and his number 1 was Jordan Shipley. That was his number 1 guy, was Jordan Shipley, but he had Xavier Worthy on his own personal list, and if anybody who's a Texas fan wants to chime in on where they see Xavier Worthy all time, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that as far as Texas wide receivers go, because that's a pretty talented position group coming out of that school.
Well, and part of it is that, and not to knock those teams from the 7, but they ran the bone.
Yeah.
So, they ran the wishbone for so long.
This is like 90s on, basically.
In their glory days. So, there were not, the kind of receivers that you would have that nowadays to compare to from their glory days in the 60s and 70s, because they didn't throw the ball all that much. But yeah, if you look from the 90s on, our good friend Quan Cosby's got to be on that list. He's he's a 7th all time in receiving. And, Mike Adams is like the first big time one, and he's from 1992. And that's 92 to 96 he was there. But yeah, go down the list. There's some guys like Eric Metcalf, who was maybe more of a kicker.
Player,
yeah, great player.
A specialist.
Yeah, more of a specialist. Marquise Goodwin.
Who's had a really nice career, but yeah, I just hadn't really thought about that with Xavier Worthy and where he sort of fell all time, but
4th all time in receiving.
Yeah, so he's top 5 in a lot of categories, and especially in scoring, and so just wanted to make mention of that because we didn't get around to that yesterday. So that was the first big domino to fall.
Paxton throws out Limas Swede. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
I haven't heard that name in forever, but yeah, Limas Swede was a really, really good player. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting sort of thought that I hadn't really considered all that much. So a really great player in Xavier Worthy, who clearly, had some injury issues last year with that hand, came back, had a really strong 1,000+ yard season, and was just, had not the type of impact that you would have hoped for in the semifinals, but had an impact, had a big catch and all that. And I think that's a guy that, is going to be probably more easily replaceable than the D lineman when it comes down to it. So let's transition into that. Texas losing Xavier Worthy. And I said yesterday, a lot about Texas. I think they'll be able to reload, and I think they're in a really good spot with Sark right now, where they've got some momentum, and there's not really anything that should divert them from that. It's just a matter of how much more can they pick up and how high can they take it? Can they eventually be above everybody else? And it seems like they're building towards that. But as far as next year and who they might be replacing, Worthy's a big one. but not impossible to replace. But then we learn about a couple more today, and there's still several other guys that have to make decisions as well that we'll be talking about in the coming days. But the two today, Byron Murphy that you mentioned, one of their two all-star defensive lineman that is definitely going to go and carve out a pro career for himself and will be a first-round type of a player. And I haven't seen him, I haven't really gone through all the mock drafts just yet and all those types of different things, but he's a guy who's obviously going to be getting a lot of attention moving forward. And, I mean, that's not surprising. I mean, coming off of the season and the career and just at the position he is and the abilities that he has, that's not surprising. But, yeah, Byron Murphy is headed to the NFL. And then Jonathon Brooks, saw that come down here in the last hour or so, last 30 minutes or give or take. Or, no, I guess the last couple hours. And, he's headed off to the pros as well. And I initially was kind of surprised by that. Like the Byron Murphy one I saw, and I was just like, okay, duh. The Jonathon Brooks one I saw, and I kind of was like, that's interesting because he is coming off of the injury. And so you just wonder how that works into things. But I don't know. I think you watched that game the other night, and there were definitely some moments you could have used Jonathon Brooks. There's definitely some moments where you probably should have, could have run the ball, regardless of having Jonathon Brooks or not. Yeah. But, your young running backs there, Baxter, Blue, and you have other guys, they seem ready to make an impact. They helped carry the load these last few weeks, and I do think they still miss Jonathon Brooks. But being at the position that he's at, coming off of an injury, the year Texas had, I mean, that's a lot of work to come back and just hope that it can be what it was the year before. And so I don't fault him, or not that it matters that I would fault him, but I don't blame him at all for deciding to go the pro route. And I'm just slightly surprised because I had sort of talked myself into, or I'd let, I guess, other tweets and stuff that I saw kind of talk myself into the idea of, well, he's hurt. He's got to come back in rehab and he's got to get healthy and all those things. No, not so much. I mean, he is a running back after all, so he can rehab and get his pro career started and do it that way. So congrats to Jonathon Brooks and Byron Murphy on their decisions. Xavier Worthy yesterday. Those are three really, really good players that Texas will be losing, but that's why you recruit, the way that they do is to replace those types of guys. That's how you want your program to run, is to lose guys to the NFL and have those 4 and 5 stars ready to come in and replace them. But, that's a couple of big decisions and yet not surprises. So we'll see what else comes for the rest of that roster who has a decision to make.
So other draft news from a team that lost the other day, Alabama's stud cornerbacks, Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold, both probably not getting past the 35th pick, which would put him in the second round, but they are declaring for the draft. So Alabama's lost 11 guys in 2 days at least, but doesn't seem to really matter for them. I'm more interested to see where some of their transfers go. So, Tavondre Sweat has declared for the NFL draft. Thank you, Emory. So he is going as well, and he's a dude who there's not like, even at a defensive tackle position where there's big dudes, he's in the Vince Wilfork, Ted Washington, Gilbert Brown size category of where he just can eat so much space up in the middle, and he's strong and athletic. So he's going to be a really interesting prospect. Yeah,
I mean, that's the other part of that pairing. And shoot, I'd completely, I guess, just blanked that out of my memory. But he declared a couple of days ago. So just catching up, I guess, on the post-New Year's news. And that's obviously a big one as well. So both of your big-time defensive linemen, your top 5 all-time type of wide receiver, and your best running back this past season before the injury hit in Jonathon Brooks. So that's a collection of talent, not to mention the guys who will just be graduating and moving on as is. But I guess either I'd seen the Sweat news and blocked it out of my memory, or maybe I'd never even got around to seeing it. I'm not quite sure. I haven't. This is the downside of not being on Twitter all the time. That's one thing I've learned from it is Twitter's got a little too chaotic for me during the season. Sometimes I just need to take a break from it. It's not anything in particular. My brain needs to rest. So when we went on Christmas break, I went on Christmas break, man. I watched bowl games and I did all that, and I looked at my phone on occasion, but I pretty much tried to stay off of Twitter. So that probably cost me in letting certain stories fall through the cracks. But that's obviously a big time prospect. And you look at Texas's draft history here recently, it's not been what you would want it to be. Even, a couple years with nobody whatsoever. And that was very much a social media thing you couldn't miss because there were memes galore when that would happen. And it's not something that's going to happen anytime soon with Sark at the helm. They're going to be producing first-rounders on a regular basis from here on out for what should be quite a while, especially with the way college football is kind of starting to siphon up towards the top. And the teams that have the goods are going to have even more of that sort of advantage moving forward. When you have the transfer portal, you can go take the guy who's an NFL star from Wyoming and just go pluck him out of the portal and have him for a year, and then he can go and be a Texas player in the NFL. Like, that's going to really skew the NFL numbers, I think, for a lot of programs. But I think with the way they're recruiting, just period, you add in the portal, we should never see a year where Texas doesn't have a draft pick. But even the first rounders, I think, are going to be few and far between when they don't have guys like that over these next few seasons. So, that this year you're going to be locked in as a Texas fan to this NFL draft because you've got a handful of bona fide stars that are going to be going day one, day two for sure. And we just ran down Murphy, Sweat, Brooks, I don't know about him and how that'll all work out, obviously.
Depends on how he heals,
Yeah, it depends on that.
He was headed that way, though.
Yeah, but Worthy obviously will be a pretty quick pick as well. Although the wide receiver rooms are crowded, there's wide receivers are in high demand. I mean, there's like 5 guys that could go in the first round, if not more than that. And you add him into that mix, he'll fall pretty highly, I would think, still. So, good problem to have, though, right? That's something you want, is to churn out NFL guys and just replenish your roster with great recruiting classes.
Yep. All right, let's get